I've been having this conversation with more and more people just in random conversations lately. And that's the ability to set boundaries. I feel like a lot of times we feel when we're not able to set boundaries, if we haven't built that skill yet, we constantly question whether or not somebody really wants to be involved in a conversation or whether they're just placating us.
Hmm.
And when we become better at setting boundaries for ourselves, we expect others to do the same, which allows us to say if they didn't want to be in this conversation, they wouldn't be in it, which means that I have something to contribute. That was a big shift for me. Like the moment that I started setting boundaries for myself, I started taking the position that is not my job to remove myself from this conversation. It is their job to tell me that they are not interested in having it right now. As long as I'm invited in, I have something to share. And that was a really interesting perspective shift for me.
Do you have a very specific moment of yourself when the light was there a concrete conversation where the light bulb went off in your head?
There's a couple, and I think that this is why I'm really interested to get to your tips, because I think it came through practice. The story that I tell the most was actually my introduction to my podcast coach. And it was 3 years ago. And I had been seeing his stuff all over social media. He was local to Las Vegas. He was here. And I got up the bravery to send him a message, believing that he was so big, he was never going to respond. And so I send him this message saying, hey, it was the worst message ever. Let me pick your brain, right? The things that you're never supposed to say to anybody. And I sent him, hey, I'd love to pick your brain sometime. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? I just want to get to know you a little bit. And within 2 days, he had responded. And I shut down. I was like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? Like he wasn't supposed to respond. Like I'm not supposed to be in this conversation. It took me 8 months to get back to him. And then the longer it took, the more awkward it was, right? Because what do you come up with of the excuses why you didn't respond to a conversation you started for somebody that you said you wanted to get to know? And what ended up happening is he did a podcasting workshop in Vegas, and he reached out to me and said, are you ready to have that conversation yet? And I ended up going to his workshop and he became my podcast coach. And then the more and more that I had to start reaching out to people to be podcast guests, because when you first start your podcast, nobody's reaching out to you, right? So every single person I would reach out to, it was like, why am I in this conversation? Like, what do I have to offer them? And the more and more I did it, the more comfortable it became. And then somebody invited me to their stage. And this was the moment it switched for me. Somebody gave me a platform and they said, I want you to come stand on this platform, and I'm giving you permission to say these things to these people. There was somebody that I greatly respect in that audience. And he came up to me and he said, I don't know who that was on that stage, but he was not the same person that is off stage. And you need to figure out how to make them the same. And I sat back and I thought, what was different about my mindset? And the answer was, somebody gave me permission to say what I wanted to say.